Now, this is how you break out of the stress loop. The stress loop is something that keeps most of you stuck because you're men with actual lives, with family, with work, and other issues. So, this is the stress loop. It starts with a lack of time. A lack of time means you've got family to look after, you've got a job. You can't just follow the typical advice of just train at the gym a week long. And this leads to stress and overthinking. You're stressed about work, you're stressed about how you're actually going to balance that with fitness, you're stressed about whether you'll get the work done, and then stressed about the fact that you'll probably not have time for your fitness, right? And that just leads you down a cycle of stress. Now, this leads to ultimately a cortisol spike. Cortisol is the stress hormone. When cortisol is higher, it affects your thinking, it affects your judgment, it affects your mood, and that's at a biological level, which then leads to bad decisions. And those bad decisions then lead to the cycle repeating itself. So this is how you break out of that. Now, the first step is mindfulness. This might sound cliche, but understanding that you are ultimately in control. As much as I've just listed things like cortisol and stress, which may feel like it's out of your control, that ultimately comes down to you and your decisions, right? So step one of mindfulness, I would recommend meditation. It doesn't have to be full on deep like humming and all of that shit. It's just sitting with your thoughts for maybe 5-10 minutes and understanding that you can control what comes in and out of your mind. And when the negative thoughts and the stress comes, you can just let go and just be like, it's fine, I've got it under control, right? Be proactive instead of reactive. Reactive is letting your environment and circumstances determine your emotional state. Proactive is letting your emotional state determine your circumstances. So really you control your emotional state in that sense. So step one is mindfulness. You need to be mindful. Now, that leads on to the second step, which is basic decision making. That mindfulness is going to link directly with this because when you're mindful, you understand that you are ultimately in charge of your decisions. When you make bad decisions, whether it's mindless snacking, so typically that will be eating stuff like processed sugar, you're going to be getting lazy, like sitting on the sofa, whatever it is, thinking like a victim, which again, mindfulness solves because you find victim thoughts of, oh, this is happening to me, oh, this is terrible, and processed food as well, like in general, all of those bad decisions come from a lack of mindfulness because you're just reacting. I'm stressed, this is what I want to do. And then you do it, and before you know it, you think, why did I do that? Oh well, I probably don't even have time to think about that. Let's carry on with what else I'm doing. So you need to be mindful, so then you make good decisions. And that could be eating whole foods, right? It can be deep breathing and mindfulness, like we said. That's a decision within of itself. Patience, understanding that not everything is an emergency. A lot of the time it's your interpretation of it. Your interpretation of time. You think, shit, I don't have time for this, don't have time for this. If you zoom out, you do have plenty of time. It's just the way you're structuring it. And when you eat whole foods, one, you don't need loads of time for cooking, and two, it's going to help your decision-making process because you're going to feel calmer, again, at a biological level. Now, the third step is to build momentum, right? This is the third and final step, and it's quite simple. When you make the better eating decisions and the mindfulness, it leads to better mental clarity, which then leads to visible results. Not only will you see a change in your physique and your energy levels, but you also see a change in the way you manage your time. Suddenly you feel more clarity in your mind. You aren't stressed as much. You can step back and think before you make decisions and manage your time better. Right, and overall, this lowers your stress and well-being, which leads to more mental clarity, more good habits, and it reinforces that process. So now you have another positive feedback loop, which is actually positive this time and isn't keeping you stuck. Now, that is the general gist of how to break out of the stress loop, but most men aren't even aware of the stress loop in the first place. They don't know it's a thing. So now you know.